Good morning, afternoon, evening, or night, whichever one applies to you. This is Mr. Fusion here, back to talk about more Dragon Ball Daima. I am a video essayist on YouTube, but I'm also having fun just giving my initial impressions on Dragon Ball Daima. So if you feel so inclined, please give me a like and a subscribe and a comment and all that fun stuff, and let's get to it, okay? Thank you, love you, let's go. So this is still part of Dragon Ball Daima January, my answer to Dragon Ball Dissection December, which caused me to get behind in my viewings of Dragon Ball Daima. This one is technically going to be what catches me up, although it won't be for you because this is going to come out later, but as I'm recording this right now, episode 13 just came out. I just watched it along with episode 12, which means that at the moment, I am caught up. So let's go ahead and talk about these episodes, starting with episode 12, which is True Strength. Now, True Strength has a lot happen within the main framework of the story, as in 2 of the 3 Dragon Balls are collected in this one episode, so it is pretty momentous from that perspective. It's also pretty momentous because of the major spoiler, which happened to be the one thing I was spoiled on before I managed to watch this. And that is, of course, that Vegeta, while in the process of fighting Tamagami number 2, transforms into a Super Saiyan 3. Although it's heavily implied that he does not learn the transformation or ascend to the transformation in this moment, but that he has had it in his back pocket for some time. And, you know, that's a thing that happened. He looks cute enough, I guess. And, you know, I hope it sells the action figures they want it to sell. But I'll be honest, I really couldn't care less. And it actually does make me glad that that is the one spoiler I got from the show because, frankly, it's a completely pointless addition. I don't dislike it, but it doesn't do anything for me either. It's just kind of a thing that happens. And so I guess I can be a little bit negative on it just on that basis. Because what's the point of having a transformation? Well, what's the point of having a transformation, period? But I know this is Dragon Ball and we're never going to get away from them. But what's the point of having a transformation if it doesn't mean anything? If it's just an, ooh, look at that, let's update our wikis. And I know I'm being really, kind of biting towards a certain type of fan. I'm not really trying to be. It is just a little bit frustrating. But ultimately, when watching it, it's just kind of I kind of spaced out, I'm not going to lie. Again, it was a good-looking fight, like all the fights here have been so far, and the water's part, and there's some good CG effects, and yada yada yada, but what am I supposed to say about this? He has it. Good job. And I guess the main reason why I spaced out during this is because it's kind of rote. It's routine. There's not really anything to hook my interest at this point. And especially since I knew about it coming in, where it just seemed like this was the obvious direction it was going to go, which is Vegeta's going to struggle with this foe, he's going to transform into a bigger, brighter, golder version of himself, and then he's going to win. And there's not really any kind of twist or turn or narrative hook for that. It's just what Dragon Ball does. It's a foregone conclusion. As soon as he transforms, well, okay, he's going to win now, I guess, and that's what happened. So, you basically could have cut this out or cut the form out and just had him win another way and it wouldn't really be any different. So as far as big spoilers go, this really ended up being a nothing burger, really. And I was much more interested in the parallel fight because just like in the previous episode, there is a parallel fight going on, which is Majin Buu fighting Tamagami number 1. And that's much more interesting because it's a character who is still a bit of a wild card and you don't know how it's going to shake out. You don't know if he's going to win. The whole thing has left me wondering, though, what happens when the whole thing is reset? Or can it be reset? Like when Goku got the first Dragon Ball, that's where my mind immediately went. Where it's like, okay, the Ball Guardian gives up the ball, Goku takes it. Well, what happens if he gets killed 2 days later and doesn't get the other 2 balls? Does the ball magically return to its owner? Because, if it doesn't, then who gets to start the process over again? Like, what if some random peon comes up and goes, hey, I want to get the Dragon Ball, and number 3's like, well, it's already gone, and actually that was like 10 years ago, and he never got the rest of them, so, whatever. So that was just something that was in my head, and especially came back watching this. Because obviously we know that Glorio and then by extension Goku is working for Arinsu. We don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but there could be twists and turns, and as far as Goku and most of the rest of his group would be concerned, this is a rival group who are going after the Dragon Balls. And the rule thing is structured so that one person is supposed to be the one doing the challenge. But obviously, if you're outsourcing this stuff, then as we see, we're having multiple people take on these challenges. And so it certainly seems a lot easier for Goku to just steal a Dragon Ball from this guy, or for these guys to steal a Dragon Ball from Goku. And I'm just sort of free form associating right here, but it does make me wonder what the rules would be. Because the rules do kind of come up here, and this is what is interesting. Majin Buu is giving number 1 a hard time, but eventually stops because he wants chocolate. Ku runs out and gets some chocolate because he is useful, darn it. And with the chocolate, Majin Buu is able to defeat number 1, but what they don't know, because they weren't there when Goku got the number 3 ball, is that there is another challenge on top of that. And, this one is not a shell game. It's an arithmetic game, where lots and lots and lots of numbers are quickly flashed across a screen, and Majin Buu has to provide the sum. Something that even genius Arinsu says is completely unfair. And yeah, it is ridiculously fast, and I can't imagine how anybody would figure this out, but that's where my beloved Majin Buu comes in, who just has the answer. Because he does have skills, darn it! He's not useless, and I love him so much. And he is able to pass the answer on to Majin Buu, and somehow nobody notices this. And so Buu gives the answer, gets the ball, and gets all the credit from Arinsu, but Majin Buu doesn't seem too bothered by it, just like, oh well. He's just like, but I did. Oh well, who cares? And he's just so happy all the time. But that is technically cheating. And I do wonder if that's going to come back to bite them in the butt later on, if that's somehow going to be exposed. Because I am pretty sure that it is said, at least during the fighting, that it has to be one-on-one, so I would assume that would apply to this challenge too. And given that the show makes it a point that nobody realizes that Ku is the one who solved it, it very much seems like that holds true for this. So that was a lot of fun, and then once Vegeta actually wins the fight, it also becomes a lot of fun there too, and that's when my attention came back. Like, oh, we're done with that? We're done with the Super Saiyan 3 stuff? Okay, I'm paying attention now. Because again, that's where I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know what challenge Vegeta's going to get, if he's going to be up to said challenge, and what it's going to mean, and so there's a lot more for my brain to be focused on and not just wander off and go, I wonder what I'm going to talk about in this video. And I do like that these run parallel, because the challenges actually managed to trick me because of that, because of the expectation they set up for the audience. Because Vegeta seems to get another math problem about a little boy who has biscuits, and it's basically a word problem. Little boy has biscuits, he gives this many to this character and takes these back and then eats this many himself, and how many does he ultimately... the final part is, the boy Johnny gives the rest of his biscuits to the snake Ichiro. How many biscuits is the snake able to eat? And, especially since I was so locked out of the last math problem that it was impossible for me to keep up, I really was trying to keep up with this one. I was like, going along with it, okay, this half of this, third of this, plus 3 got 2 back. And my answer for the math, I think was 3. I haven't gone back to double check that though, so we can all have fun with that. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know. The show doesn't give the answer to the math problem because it turns out this is not a math problem, it's a logic problem. Obfuscated by all the pictures and the math and the fact that you're only given 10 seconds to solve it. And for us, the audience, because of the expectation of what we had just gotten done watching, which I really appreciate, that's really clever. Vegeta is able to solve the problem at the last second by giving the answer as 0 because snakes don't eat biscuits. And that was very satisfying. I don't know, is it physically impossible for snakes to eat biscuits, especially demon snakes, especially cartoony drawing demon snakes? I don't know, but apparently that worked. I don't know if that's really a cop-out or not, but I still think it was clever, and I'm not sure if Vegeta really figured it out, or if he just grabbed a number out of desperation and then worked backwards to figure out a reason why that made sense, because he says 0 at the same time the countdown says 0, so I don't know, but anyway, I think that was pretty clever, and now those elements, everything aside from the Super Saiyan 3 stuff, was really interesting to me. The Super Saiyan 3 felt kind of like the last act of Dragon Ball Super Superhero, where I just sort of have to shrug my shoulders and go, I guess this is the price of admission. One more thing I like about this episode, or something that made me think, is after Vegeta wins, the Tamagami approaches Neva and apologizes for failing to guard the Dragon Ball, and Neva says, no, this is the way this is supposed to be, this is good. And that ties into his explanation in the previous episode, which I didn't talk about in my last video, about how the Dragon Balls and the Ball Guardians are set up as challenges for people to overcome, to protect the balls and also to present a challenge. And it really does make me think about the planet Namek as we see it in the Frieza arc, and how Frieza describes that as what he learned about the Dragon Balls, that he was told by the first elder he met on the planet that an elder can award a Dragon Ball based on contests of strength or skill or whatever, and we never really got to see those because Frieza opted for just murdering everybody. So in a way, this sort of feels like we're finally getting to see that concept, and I really do like that. Moving on to episode 3, which is today's episode for me, but not for you as you're watching this, and you're just gonna have to keep up with me here. That is Surprise! It's the first episode of 2025, the first episode that's come out since I finished Dragon Ball Dissection December, because there was a break last week, a sort of end of year or beginning of year break, whatever. And this is another episode where it feels like the show is wearing its Dragon Ball GT influences on its sleeve. Well, first of all, the plane breaks, because of course it does, and the last episode did kind of set this up. And so the characters land on a giant-sized world called Mega, where everything is huge and dangerous, even the fluffy, cuddly hamsters, which is hilarious. Because, in Dragon Ball GT, the second planet they go to is a giant planet. And before I get into the specifics of that, before I forget, I want to talk about this because we are once again having another vehicle break down, or be incapacitated or lost, the usual stuff this show keeps doing. And I actually like the results of this one. I thought the planet was a lot of fun, but I'm going to, again, hold off on my specific thoughts on that for another minute or so. But despite the fact that I liked it, it still kind of has the same problem that a lot of the rest of this stuff has. And I know in either the last video or the one before that, I talked about how I feel the rotating vehicles in the first arc of Dragon Ball work better than this does here, because it always felt like there was a consequence that moved the story forward, be it developing the relationship with Yamcha, trying to steal the Dragon Balls, or having a tracker device, or forcing them to work together, all that kind of stuff. There was always momentum there. It is quite perfect. Because the characters say they're now going to go to the first demon world, my immediate thought was, wow, we sure aren't spending much time in the second one. We really didn't do anything here compared to the third one, where we saw towns and people and modes of technology and lots and lots and lots of exposition about it. So why are we just leaving now? I wonder if there's anything interesting about the second demon world. And the second I thought that, the plane breaks down and there's an adventure. And so that does kind of play into exactly what I was hoping for, and it does make me think that maybe the writers were having the exact same thoughts at the exact same time I was, like, oh, we're about to leave? Well, we gotta actually have something happen here. The issue here, though, is that there really isn't any development here. It's a fun diversion, but ultimately they fix the ship and they leave, and nothing of consequence actually happens, other than me being entertained, which is not nothing. but it doesn't seem to have moved the story forward. It's just, oh, well, our ship broke, and oh, we fixed our ship, and now we're out. And if this was a one-off, that would be fine, but again, their ships are lost and broken all the time, over and over again. And so this feels more like Toninjinka in the first story arc, the Karatizer Bunny, where it's just we go to a town, there's an adventure, we stop it, and we move on. If that was all the time that this stuff happened, if it happened every single time. And even that has Goku and Yamcha and Puar teaming up for the first time, which is building up to something. So that is something that once my very initial pleasantries of, oh, this was a lot of fun, which it is, once I moved past that, I was able to go, well, wait a second, though. This is just kind of more of the same, isn't it? But now that I've gotten that out of the way, I will say that I do enjoy this section, and here is why. They do wring a lot out of this concept. I love the cute fluffy death as Goku is chased by rabid hamsters. I like the fact that there is some level of tension because I don't know what's going to happen. If our heroes seem to be totally outclassed, but also because there is an inherent bit of randomness to everything. Because they are encountering a giant child and that giant child's giant dog. And so there isn't the rigidity of a match, of a contest of strength. There isn't any malice on the part of these antagonists. It is sort of the impulsiveness and curiosity of a child and an animal, and that can be all the more dangerous. It is definitely sort of a classic Honey, I Shrunk the Kids scenario, where things that are relatively innocuous when you're regular sized can become dangerous just based on size and proximity. But that is still interesting because you just don't know exactly how it's going to be solved. Ultimately, it is kind of solved by essentially a GT Kamehameha, but I do think that they play enough with the style and the various antics that can happen that it keeps my interest. Where it's like every time you think they've overcome something, a new wrinkle comes into play. The fact that the ship needs to be guarded, so it can't just be we're going to completely overpower this. There has to be a level of strategy involved, and then once, if they make too big of a racket, they're going to attract the attention of the kid. The fact that Goku doesn't want to hurt the hamsters. And then there's this cute stylistic bit where Goku lands in the fur of the dog, and the individual hair is treated like it's under an electron microscope. I thought that was a really cute detail. The fact that the dog then has ticks that also attack. Again, like I said, there are just so many different angles they come at this from, and they pretty much exhaust so many possibilities of what you can do on a giant planet. Again, to the point that I really didn't notice until I was done watching that not much of consequence happens here. And we are in a Daima wonderland, so I don't mind having a little bit of wonder once in a while. One more thing I do want to bring up before I sign off for today, because it really wasn't that much to say about these two episodes, it turns out. At least not judging by the time code on my recording device. Is that last time I brought up the idea of Goku having multiple names being brought up in conversation, except for the fact that Bluma, who's one of the people who doesn't use either of the names she talks about, doesn't actually bring up the name that she does use for Goku, Sonkun. And I speculated what consequences that might have had for the somewhat dub-leaning subtitles had that happened. Because I feel like their inclination would have been to just sort of collapse all that nuance into a single Goku name, which is what the dub has traditionally done. Similar to how the Muten Roshi has multiple names, but it's just master or titles, but is just sort of condensed into Master Roshi for the dub. Well, it turns out I have my answer, and maybe I had my answer before and I don't remember, but there is a moment in this episode, in episode 13, where Goku finds himself in a moment of danger and Bluma cries out Sonkun, and the subtitles leave it as Sonkun with the honorific and everything. And I'm like, oh, well, hey, there we go. Great, I'm happy to see that. Yay. So I just wanted to make sure I remembered to talk about that, although chances are I feel many of you might have already mentioned it in my last video by the time you see this one. I really feel like I'm time traveling right now. Oh, Oh, I almost forgot. Speaking of calling back to things that I mentioned in a previous video, this was also a thing too. Because I had this really big tangent last time about the Namekian language and how it's been portrayed at earlier points in Dragon Ball. And I specifically talk about how when it first comes up in the 23rd Budokai, and the animated version had to figure out a way to make an audible version of Toriyama's random alien-looking symbols, they achieved that by taking the voice recordings of the actors and playing them backwards and having that be the Namekian language. And to my shock and amazement, that actually kind of comes back in episode 12. In an amazing coincidence, because when Tamagami number 2 is giving his logic problem to Vegeta, he takes out a card and we can briefly see the writing on it that he's reading this off to. And what is it? It's Japanese katakana backwards. Seriously, I cannot believe that immediately came up in some form right after I got done talking about it in not a completely unrelated context, because that's kind of what makes it interesting, especially since Namek is demon, apparently. There is a connection there. And that's kind of, it has to be a coincidence on their part. There's no way. Could they have been thinking about that? About what the animated series did in, 1988? And just happened to do that? Or was it a coincidence where they just happened to do the same thing? To create an alien-type language, just run it backwards. Because I am so tickled by that. That is certainly something I cannot take credit for noticing myself, though. I have to give credit to Herms for that one, as he pointed it out in his Blue Sky thread. And, please go ahead and follow me on Blue Sky. I've moved over there recently, and I'm not posting on Twitter as much anymore. I'm trying to move away from that platform. Oh, geez, my feet fell asleep. But yes, he did catch that and did confirm that not only is it katakana, it actually is the story that he's telling Vegeta, if you actually turn the characters back around the right way. So, hey, pretty awesome. So there we are. Those are episodes 12 and 13 of Dragon Ball Daima. I'm still having a lot of fun. I still have a lot of the same issues, but we have built up some momentum, and I'm still really enjoying Majin's Do and Ku, and I can't wait to see more of them, because they really didn't have a role in episode 13, which is fine, but I'm looking forward to seeing more of what they're going to do. Majin Do. But thank you so much for watching this next installment of Dragon Ball Daima January. I'll be back with episodes 14 and 15, or maybe just 14. I need to look at my schedule for this again and how this is going to work out with me getting back on track to my regular videos, because obviously right now I'm at the point where there aren't 2 episodes for me to catch up on, but I kind of need it to be 2 episodes to make it the perfect end of January, but also I'm going to have to get a video out a week early for patrons, and I thought I had this all figured out, but all of a sudden I feel like I might have messed that up somehow. We'll see. Well, but there will be more Dragon Ball Daima January in the future and next week, and presumably it's already available for $10 or higher patrons right now. Clearly I'm a mess. Why do you people even listen to me? I clearly don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just a goofy little person trying the best I can, but thank you so much for paying attention to me, and I will see you next time. Have a good day. Bye!